Landon and I have been having a good-natured back and forth about the value of set pieces, but the reality is that when things aren't going well, especially for a team like the United States, which you talk so much about character, personality, and history, set pieces, that is something that's been ingrained from the beginning.
Kick, Tillman runs away. Berhalter hooking it in. It's Richards. It's in! And the U.S. does use the set piece. It's Chris Richards, his second ever goal. And the U.S. finally breaks through against Saudi Arabia.
And you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so it's wonderful to see. And guess what? They all count the same.
Hello, Sunshine. Welcome to the State of the Union, presented by Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre. Come to life. I am Alexi Lalas, and this is where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show is live, as it will be throughout the Gold Cup following each day of action. Today's show, we review day 6 of action, and we look ahead to day 7. Obviously, day 6, U.S. back playing their second game, and then day 7, the return of Panama and others. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant, a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. And guess what? A special guest, another special guest, our Fox Soccer colleague. You know him from both the studio and the booth, Mr. Landon Donovan. You also know him from the Unfiltered Soccer podcast with Tim Howard. And come to find out, he has a book coming out next year, just in time for the World Cup, a memoir. So you'll learn all about Landon on and off the field, I'm sure. Landon, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Mosse, was that you in the promo?
Yeah, it's always great to see the reaction of somebody watching
I
the
didn't know
opening
that
for
was
the
you.
first time. Yes.
What were you doing?
A little dancing there in the chicken outfit.
Yeah, don't do that anymore.
Now, you mentioned that he does a podcast with Tim Howard. Landon, I overheard you mention something on set today that caught my attention. Is it true that Tim Howard is a big Nas fan? He has a tattoo
he has
of
a
him?
well, he has tats everywhere. It's somewhere like on his wrist or something. He loves Nas.
I am a giant Nas fan as well. I've seen him in
yeah.
concert 7 times.
Okay.
Does Mr. Nas, does the Nas?
It's not Mr. Nas. But
Well, does he?
it's just
Does it
Nas.
represent anything? Does it? Is it short for
Nas
something?
His
No,
name
that's
is
not.
Nasir Jones.
Oh,
So
just kidding.
Nas,
All right.
got it. I feel like I've heard you talk about this before. Speaking of that, what's the guy's name? I'm watching a documentary. Travis
Scott.
Travis Scott. Do you know
Yes.
of this young man?
I'm aware of him, yeah.
It's a horrible documentary in that it documents a horrible concert disaster. And but I never heard him or heard of him, but he's got a lot of energy out there, people going crazy and everything like that. So anyway, the documentary's really interesting and good, and shows some of the problems when you have a lot of people in a confined space without the proper preparation. So I'll recommend that. I think that's on Netflix. Landon, we talk about things that we have watched. Are you watching anything, or have you watched anything that you would recommend if somebody said, hey, I need to watch something?
I have 3 young kids.
Okay.
We don't have a TV in our room, so not a lot. The last things we watched, and we still have not watched the last episode, so please do not say anything, is White Lotus.
Okay.
And then I've been watching Landman
Okay.
by myself.
All right.
Phenomenal.
The last episode of White Lotus was a doozy. I'm just telling you.
All right, we won't talk about that.
Nothing.
Should we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where should we start? Because we had some interesting action today.
Today we had a doubleheader in Group D. We'll take them in order only because the Trinidad and Tobago Haiti game sets up the scenario for the U.S. match. So Trinidad and Tobago and Haiti played to a 1-1 draw in Houston. Both goals in the second half, Pierrot and Garcia. There was an odd VAR moment late in the first half. Haiti awarded a penalty that was inexplicably chalked off, and then they missed a penalty late in the second half, Prunier skying it. So Haiti should really be kicking themselves. They should have won this match, but the draw did mean that the U.S. could clinch a quarterfinal berth with a victory later on.
Landon, thoughts on this game? We did both of them.
Yeah, we were watching. It was a crazy game.
Yep.
The last 10 minutes, I wanted to go on for like 3 hours. It was just back and forth. Haiti in both games now, when they look back, will absolutely kick themselves. They should have won both games. At worst, a tie against Saudi and then win today. So they should be on 4 points. Instead, they're on 1. And now they backs against the wall and they have to win against the US on Sunday.
And Trinidad and Tobago,
Oh my
I mean, I
God.
guess it's a step forward in that they didn't let 5 goals in. They didn't lose the game, but still, God, I mean,
Are they not the
that's
worst?
a bad team.
They're not the worst Trini
It
team you've
I
ever seen.
mean, I don't know what Dwight York
I
thinks. I mean, there was a point in the first game, I don't know if you remember it, where the camera caught him laughing at what was going on in the field. And, you know, it's a horrible indictment on his team, by the way. But the fact that they are still involved in possibly qualifying says
He made a
says lot.
comment before the game. He said, "We have." Oh, you're in trouble, Moss.
Uh-oh.
He made a comment before the game. He said, "We only have 4 defenders here. We need more defenders." And I'm like, "Well, you're the coach. Why didn't you bring in more defenders?"
It's crazy.
I have no idea.
It's
They're
crazy.
woeful.
Anyway, but it was a fun game, and certainly at the end,
Yeah, it
a
was.
lot of action back and forth, and 3v2s and 2v1s and space and all that kind of stuff. But let's get to the main event, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. USA's second game against Saudi Arabia. Again, Saudi here as a guest, as was Qatar previously. And as we said all through the last few days, this was going to be a step up in terms of competition. It was. Mauricio Pochettino rolled back, exact same lineup, same 11. Before we get into the game, what do you think his mentality was, Landon? Because some people might not have watched or heard in terms of playing the same 11. You've been a coach. You know how, you're tempted to change, but he said, no, this is the 11.
I think he's doing a few things. One is there's been some tumult around this team, right? Nations League did not help him find any clarity about this team. They were bad. The players he thought he could count on were not good. So then he rolls into Turkey and Switzerland. Those don't go well. So he has even less clarity. And he found a team that won a game, yes, against a terrible Trinidad team. And I think he's trying to send a message and say, if you win and you play well, you're going to play again. And that is part of that will help the players understand big picture. Hey, you play well, you win, you play again. And that's it. And if he, as long as he sticks by that, there's clarity for the players and that helps everyone.
Yeah, I think players respect and admire
Yeah.
loyalty. I mean, I don't think players are naive. They recognize that, while sports is much more of a meritocracy than life, it's not a complete meritocracy and total meritocracy in that people sometimes are treated differently. That just kind of happens. But to the extent that you can mitigate some of that and treat people equally and reward good play and reward performance, I think players respond to that, and I think that they will gravitate to Pochettino. And the message that you're talking about him sending is not just internally; it's also externally to the players that aren't there.
Yeah.
Having said that, he gave them the opportunity. Now they have to take it. Go out against Saudi Arabia. As you said, it's a very different type of proposition, not for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is this was a Saudi Arabia team that said, we're not going to have possession. U.S. had lots and lots of possession. Saudi Arabia pulled back, absorbed plenty of pressure. They were very organized in their pressure. They looked to break. And I think that there was some not only some frustration, but a little bit of confusion as to what the U.S. wanted to do in that first half, Mosse.
I know Landon was harping on this on TV. Pochettino loves playing out of a back three, which is very common in world football right now. One of the fullbacks pushes up and the other drifts to the middle and functions almost like a third center back. But you thought that was one guy too many tonight because Saudi Arabia was playing in such a low block that you thought it was unnecessary to have Alex Freeman back there. They should have just played out with the 2 center backs.
Well, especially because the Saudis had just one striker high defending three center backs, right? And so it just becomes a numbers game. And if a team is going to sit that deep, you're okay sending another number forward. And in this case, I thought it would have made sense for Freeman to go higher and wider and Jack McGlynn to come inside. And he did a little bit of that at halftime. He rotated Sebastian Berhalter back, which I think hurt the team a little bit. But when you have a team that sits that deep, you need to send more numbers forward and just put more and more pressure on them.
Yeah, so the changes didn't come at halftime, and they waited to the kind of the typical 60-minute. But you want to go through some of the actions in the first half?
Well, we talked about him keeping the same lineup, and I almost think one of the most interesting positions in that regard is goalkeeper. The fact that Matt Freese has started both these games, and there were some Pochettino quotes that intimated that Freese is his number one right now over Matt Turner. What do you make of that, Landon?
I got some clarity on that. Sometimes with Pochettino, because English is not his first language.
Mhm.
So if you read the quote, and I don't know if I don't have it in front of me, but he basically said, we want to see if Matt Freese can be the number one goalkeeper. And I think what he was saying is, well, now I know from speaking to people, is we want to see if he can be a number one goalkeeper. So, like through the tournament, can he be the guy who can be our number one? Doesn't mean he is the number one or he's going to be the number one. But I said this on the broadcast, and you know this, Lex. Things can happen fast. If they have 2 games now without a goal conceded.
Mhm.
What happens if they go another 4 and win the Gold Cup and don't concede a goal? Maybe he's the goalie in the next camp.
Well, I think one thing that Pochettino has made very clear, and I would think that this would happen with any coach, to be quite honest with you, given the circumstances, that there is a competition for goalkeeper right now. And, a couple years ago, when Matt Turner was undisputed, there was never going to be any question. And I do think that Matt Turner will have his opportunities, but that there is a competition, that says a lot. And that Zach Steffen, just because of his injuries, has not been able to be in that position. Next man up. There's an opportunity here for Matt Freese. He certainly didn't hurt himself tonight,
No.
and I think only helped himself. And so when you go around this roster of the starting lineup, I don't think. Well, Malik Tillman's interesting because he was basically non-existent the first half, and really kind of uninspired in the first half. And yet the second half, I thought he was really, really good and one of the players of the game. We'll get to Chris Richards because he deserves a section by himself here in a second. I don't think that Jack McGlynn helped his case. I don't think that Luca De La Torre helped his case. I think that Patrick Agiman is, we've talked about him, in that there is an immaturity to him that's kind of to be expected, not because he's necessarily that young, but he's inexperienced. But I want to see more, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially because it's an evergreen problem for this U.S. team up top. I don't think he hurt himself, but there still has to be more. I think Sebastian Berhalter helped himself. He does things that people don't notice, and I'm not just talking about the assist on the goal. He's clean. He's predictable in the best possible sense. Diego Luna. Even though he, didn't score a goal and ultimately got subbed out, I still loved his work and his personality on the field. I think it's infectious out there. I was so frustrated with Max Arston, not because he's not a good player, but because of the way that the Saudi Arabians played. He had so much time and space out there left. And what I was frustrated also with, in terms of the team, was the amount of back passes and the amount of looking back first as opposed to risking. I don't even care if you lose it. The ability and the willingness to take players on and to kind of force some things, you have to do that. I understand the virtue of patience in this game. Believe me, I do. But at some point, you got to make something happen. And then too often in the first half, nobody wanted to make anything happen.
I wonder about the Luna-Tillman dynamic sometimes. I know they alternate, but Luna's main reference point on the field is on the left side, and then Tillman plays centrally. And I wonder if you're getting the best out of Diego Luna by putting him on the left wing rather than allowing him to float more centrally.
I think it probably depends on the game. So in the Trinidad game, it was fine because he was free to literally go anywhere because Trinidad were so bad. There was so much space. In this game, it was a lot tighter, a lot more difficult. Potentially, yeah. It was always going to be a difficult game. I played in a ton of games like that where the team is sitting deep. You don't touch the ball a lot. You're not impactful in the game a lot. And so it's hard to find the ball and find space. And people go, well, just go get the ball and make something happen. It's not that easy, right? So this was a more challenging game. But by the way, guys, that is what a real game looks like, right? The Trinidad game it was like playing against boys, right? And this is what a real game looks like. So do they deserve another opportunity to go again? I think so, Mosse. But they've got to be better if they really want to make a case to be starting.
I don't know if you remember this, but when the roster was first announced, I saw this abundance of center forwards: Ajiman, Brian White, Downs, even Haji Wright can play as a center forward, and a scarcity of wingers. And so I thought the U.S. might play a lot with two up top in this Gold Cup, and we saw some of that in the second half when he brought on Downs. Do you think that's an interesting look that you might want to see more of throughout this tournament?
Well, in circumstances, yeah, those two are hard to play against. I mean, Ajimong and Downs or Ajimong and Haji Wright on the field together, that's not fun to play against, right? And so I think depending on the circumstance, but right now it's pretty clear Mauricio Pochettino wants to play in a certain way, and that doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon.
All right, so the first half comes and goes. I mean, I think on the 45th minute, that was the first shot that the U.S. had. So while they had all of this possession, they weren't creating a whole lot. Saudi Arabia had a couple of opportunities, one of them that was snuffed out by Chris Richards. And I guess let's talk about Chris Richards here, because it is time for our boost of the game presented by Yerba Madre. Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre, come to life. All right. Chris Richards, for me, the player of the game. Even without scoring the goal, I thought that he was vital. We mentioned I think goal saving, because if you actually look at the block that he had, the amount of space that he covered to make that block, and this shot, if you're watching the pod, you can see that it's going on the far side. But for me, when it comes to Chris Richards, he should get all of the flowers. And I will raise my hand. I would be the first to admit that when Chris Richards first burst on the scene, didn't move me. I said, no, I'm not seeing it. There was a immaturity to his play, and there was a real kind of lackadaisical type of approach that scared me for a center back. Yeah. But he has grown with leaps and bounds. Obviously, things have gone well from a club perspective. He has matured. But as I mentioned on the air, while he has matured and gotten more serious in, I guess, for lack of a better word, his craft, he hasn't lost that smile. And you saw it after the game, and that joy. And I don't think that's just the exuberance of youth. I genuinely think that's who he is, and I hope he never loses that. As serious as he may take his job, which is important, don't lose that. And I want that for this team. But he has grown into a man, but also a player that I think has solidified one of those center back positions.
Don't you think, Lex, with center backs in particular, it takes time to mature? Like,
yep.
You don't get a lot of 18, 20, 22-year-old center backs who are really ready for prime time, right? So it's taken him time. And I agree with you. He was raw. He had potential. There's a lot of guys in U.S. soccer like that who are center backs who you go, but he is. I mean, we've watched him grow into a man this year. Yep. With Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup. He has become like a real player who's dependable now.
And with all the missing players and Tyler Adams being slowed by injury, he's the most established player on the field. And you wondered if he was going to take on that leadership role and be this imposing figure. And I think we're seeing it through 2 games. Certainly tonight, he was like a man amongst boys, clearly the best player on the field.
Yeah, when I did my top 5 players that have the most to gain, I didn't even include Chris Richards, because for me, like I said, he has solidified that position. Tonight, Tim Ream next to him. I actually did include Tim Ream in my top 5 because, as I said before, 2 years ago, if you had asked anybody, including Tim Ream, by the way, that Tim Ream was going to be the potential starter for 2026, everybody would have said no. A wonderful player, great servant, but somebody else will come along. I guess the problem is that nobody else has come along. But from a Tim Ream perspective, he's just sitting there raising his hand and say, I'm still here. I'm still the best that you got. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but for Tim Ream, in terms of the most to gain, he could parlay this into yet another starting job in yet another World Cup.
You know what happens, Lex? Every time Pochettino looks around, watches training, goes to think about his team with his staff, he's like, well, I guess we'll play Tim Ream again, right? Like, and that's it's crazy, but he's just still there. And you would say right now, there's nobody in the pipeline that you're gonna go, oh yeah, he'll definitely take that spot from Tim Ream. I don't think so. Cameron Carter-Vickers, we'll see. Austin Trusty, probably not ready. Walker Zimmerman, no. Miazga, no. Miles Robinson. But he's still, you can tell he's not his first choice because Tim Ream's playing. But back to Chris Richards, it's been a great two games and excellent tonight. But I just want to remind people, coming up on Sunday, Piro and Dukans Nazon from Haiti, real players.
Yep.
Okay, these are real players. Quarterfinals, Costa Rica, Ugalde is the kid's name.
Yep. Alonso Martinez.
Sorry. Or Mexico, both Jimenez's, right? Those are real players. Canada, you've got Promise David, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, Taj Buchanan. Those are real players. So we're going to see now what Chris Richards is made of in these next 3-4 games.
And Lex, I know tomorrow on TV, you're going to have a U.S. center back power ranking. So we're going to delve into this issue on television. Landon, let me ask you this. I know you've talked a lot already this summer about the missing players. And so I don't know if that's a topic you want to delve back into, but we know the last time the U.S. was coached by a foreign manager at a World Cup was Jurgen Klinsmann, 2014. You famously took a sabbatical during that cycle and then were controversially left out of the squad. I'm very fascinated by what the first U.S. squad post-Gold Cup is going to look like when all these missing players want back in and certain guys will have shined during this tournament. How do you think Pochettino is going to manage that moving forward? I don't think Pulisic's going to be left out, but the relationship between him and Pochettino moving forward, that's going to be interesting to watch as well.
So Pochettino said, I think yesterday in his press conference, and again, I don't know if this is getting lost in translation, but he said most or many of the players here have a chance to make the World Cup roster. And I was like, whoa, that's a big statement. So we're going to learn a ton about Mauricio Pochettino through this Gold Cup, yes, but in the September friendlies, because does he bring Christian right back in? Does he bring Yunus Musa in? Do the Club World Cup guys, we assume that they're gone because of Club World Cup, but maybe he wouldn't have brought them in. The Joe Scallies, Tanner Tessmans, Josh Sargents, are those guys coming in? Which guys from this camp made a big enough impression to go in, right? And you have to imagine everything that's gone on this summer and with all the missing pieces, that first camp, he is going to go, no mercy. I'm bringing everybody I want into this camp. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to learn everything about him.
When the pictures from the game tonight came on, and we're going to talk a little bit more about crowds and how we're fixated on the crowds, if there are crowds,
there isn't a
but
crowd.
the crowds. It wasn't a great looking crowd in Austin last night. But my point is that this team now 2 games. And I still think that there are people that are sitting out there with their arms crossed. Maybe there's less after tonight, but there's still plenty of them out there that are saying, you still need to make me believe in this team. You still need to make me care. And, the first game for a lot of people is just a throwaway. All right, little better tonight. But my point is that this is a process. This is a process that Mauricio Pochettino and this current version of the team are trying to claw back and just chip away at each and every game. And my worry, Landon, to your point of, as it gets more and more, is there going to come a point where the reality of this team hits them smack in the face, and in that moment, they regress and they take 2 steps back? I hope not, and I hope it's just not judged relative to winning and losing, although this is sports. I recognize that that's what's happening. But what they're doing right now is important. It is important to the sport. It is important to next year. And I think it will relate over the next year. And then you add those folks from the outside. And again, I go back to, you want to do everything individually and collectively this summer in this moment in the Gold Cup to put pressure on those outside. So when they come back in, they know that it's up to them. And whether it's because they got their rest that they needed in the forms of Christian Pulisic, whether it's they're now healthy and somebody else stepped in and was really good in their position, but it all comes down to competition that I think he wants to foster.
Yeah, we played a clip at the top of the show from TV of you and Landon discussing the merits of set-piece goals. The U.S. winning tonight 1-0 on a set-piece goal. Chris Richards, we know it's been a great weapon for Mexico in this Gold Cup. I do want to say, what a great delivery by Sebastian Berhalter. You put
right
that
in that
perfectly.
Beautiful area right behind that the goalkeeper can't quite get it and the defenders have to back up. It's beautiful.
Do you guys want to revisit this debate right here? I mean, you seem to think if a team is scoring a disproportionate amount of their goals via set pieces, that's a problem because those are bound to dry up. And if you're not scoring goals from the run of play, that's going to catch up to you. Alexi bristles at that.
No, I know. Not necessarily that they're going to dry up, but it's something that very few teams can depend on over a long period of time. Now, if that is part of your ethos and who you are, great. I don't believe Mexico came into this tournament saying, we're going to get majority of our goals on set pieces. That is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe so. So they've scored 1 goal from the run of play. Not great, right? But it's the ultimate equalizer or winner, right? It is. And in these tournaments throughout history, our history playing in the Gold Cup, that is one advantage you almost always have. Just size-wise, that athleticism, quality of service, you always do. And it was the difference tonight.
Yeah, I'll put myself in your position and almost argue your side because I would recognize and I would admit that if I was a team coming up against the opposition who relied almost exclusively on set pieces, I'd be licking my chops.
Seems easy to account for,
I would
right?
take I think that there is this is a bigger picture type of conversation, but I think there is no sport that is more kind of unpredictable and chaos than soccer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes, there are mathematics to it, but ultimately, especially when it comes from the run of play, the only time there's really stoppages are on these set pieces. And the only time that there are actual plays we compare and contrast with American football are these set pieces. You wrote them up, and this is where you're running, and these are the picks, and these are the routes, and all that kind of stuff. And so if that I can deal with, a split-second decision from somebody who is pulling it out of the soccer god's air, that's very, very difficult to plan for. I have to adjust in that moment and rely on myself and others to be able to adjust. So I understand and agree with what you're saying. I think what we saw today was when it's not going well in the run of play, and you might come up against a team, who knows, next summer in the World Cup, you might come up against a team because it's an expanded World Cup where the U.S. is better than them. As a matter of fact, I guarantee in the group next year, there will be a team that the U.S. is better than and that the U.S. has more possession. And they will be faced with trying to break a team down in the same way that Saudi Arabia was. And you're going to need to have patience. Yes, you're going to need to have some creativity that was kind of missing today, certainly in the first half. But if nothing else is there, you might have to go to the well that is set pieces. And then sometimes that's the difference. But at the World Cup, or any level for that matter, once you get figured out, and everybody will have scouted you and will know what it is, you got to be really, really efficient and really precise in your set pieces to make some hay.
Now, spinning it forward to Sunday. So 3 teams have clinched quarterfinal berths, Mexico and Costa Rica from Group A and the U.S. from Group D, and those groups are crisscrossed with each other for the quarterfinals. So on Sunday, the U.S. will face Haiti in Dallas. Barring a catastrophe, the U.S. will finish first in its group, and then later on in the day, Mexico versus Costa Rica in Las Vegas. Miguel Herrera facing his native country. That's going to be fun. So how do you think the U.S. is going to approach this game from a lineup standpoint? There's so much conversation leading up to tonight's game about whether Pochettino was going to rotate or roll out the same 11. Now he has the same dilemma going into the third game. And also Mexico and Costa Rica. Do you think the fear of facing the U.S. in the quarterfinals might prompt them to put out stronger lineups than they otherwise would, having already qualified for the quarterfinals?
And so here's what's interesting about all this. So to answer your first question, I think Pochettino has to, and I can argue the other side, but I think he has to make a number of changes. Physically, right? Playing in Austin, draining. They've got to travel now. It's gonna be challenging. Yellow cards. 2 players have injuries. I think there will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 changes to the lineup. The interesting thing is U.S. plays first, right? So U.S. group will be decided most likely, probably 95% plus, that we will finish top of the group. What do Costa Rica and Mexico do? Right. So that's the real question. I want to take you guys back to Olympic qualifying in 2004, maybe. We were qualifying in Mexico. The Costa Rica and Mexico were in the other group as the top teams. Us and Honduras were in a group together as the quote top teams that we thought would get to the semifinals. Whoever won the semifinal, each semifinal went to the Olympics. Costa Rica upset Mexico in Mexico, so they finished top of the group. So we play Honduras in the last game. Whoever finishes first now has to play Mexico instead of playing Costa Rica in Mexico. So both of us put out like second choice teams. Honduras, I swear to God, did not cross the halfway line. They wanted to lose the game. And we ended up scoring a goal. Someone scored. We won 1-0. We played Mexico in the semi, lost 4-0, got pounded, didn't go to the Olympics. So it is a real thing. And in America, we're much more inclined to say, screw it, we're going to go for it. We're proud. Some like Mexico and Costa Rica, they might just say, not bothered. I like, we don't want to play the U.S. and we're okay to lose this game.
Didn't you famously pee on the field in the lead up to that semifinal against Mexico to wind them up?
I mean, why are you opening old wounds?
I remember this stuff. You bring it up.
Trying to stir the pot? Happy to explain the story, but
nah, it's okay. But in any event, your point is well taken. I mean, you got to be careful. I really wonder from a Mexico standpoint how they're going to play it, because this would otherwise be a situation to maybe rest some players,
right.
But they want to make sure they beat Costa Rica, finish first in the group to avoid facing the U.S. in the
correct.
quarterfinals.
And by the way, like Costa Rica, Mexico, I can make an argument that both very difficult to play. The U.S. and then the next drop-off to Saudi Arabia or Haiti or Trinidad is a big drop-off for those. It's a reality.
And you mentioned yellow cards. Luna and Berhalter got booked tonight. So those are 2 players that if they got yellows, they would be suspended.
Can I bring up a post here from our old friend Max Bredhos?
Sure.
Because and this is widening it out, and He said, do and this was relative to some of the whining and complaining out there from folks about, like we said, the crowds, and this could apply to Gold Cup. This could apply to the FIFA Club World Cup. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But the summer of soccer that is happening, all the soccer that is happening, and obviously a year away from the 2026 World Cup. Max Bretos over there said and asked the question: do we want to host the World Cup? When I scroll down here, and obviously scrolling through, in this case, it's X, but it could be any kind of social media out there, I really have my doubts. The constant complaints of heat, crowds, ticket prices, and surfaces, things that most every World Cup has to deal with. Maybe we should just let Europe and Middle East do the World Cups. Now, he's being a little facetious there, but I think he hit on something in terms of this negativity. Yeah. And some people are kind of using it because they just want to see the world burn. Some people are using it because, of politics. It could be a million different things. But I think we said last night, at some point, you just have to enjoy the soccer. It's never going to be perfect. And for many people, it's never going to look exactly as they want. As it relates to next summer, I still remain incredibly bullish and confident and positive that it is going to be the greatest World Cup that has ever been held.
Greatest sporting event.
Exactly. Greatest event in human history, given the size. Sure. So I'm not saying that there isn't work to do. Landon, I think I've asked you this before when we've talked about it, and it gets into the bigger picture of the American soccer fan, the American soccer culture. I guess there's the American soccer culture relative to soccer right now. When you see us a year away from the World Cup, what are some of the things that you think about, especially in light of maybe some of the negativity that's
Well, it's ridiculous. So you can go back to every World Cup too. And 02, South Korea, you know how hot it was in South Korea and humid? I mean, it was insane, right? Just deal with it. It's just part of it. 06, Germany was fine. It was, nice and not too hot, whatever. 2010, it was freezing cold in South Africa at times because it was their winter, right? So like 2014 Brazil is pretty damn hot, right? Qatar, they put it in the winter, but it's just it's not a big deal. Teams will adjust, teams will figure it out. Players need to stop complaining about it. People on Twitter, X, whatever, just stop complaining. I mean, it's going to be an amazing event. There's no issues.
Maybe Max needs to get off X.
That is part of it. Maybe you need to stop calling it X.
It's not a and
you're still a Twitter guy.
I will never call it X. Never.
Well, whatever you call it, it's also not a focus group.
No.
And
that
so
is clear.
While Max, I think he has a point, and
he does have a
right. Point, yeah. But there's a lot of people out there that are enjoying this summer, and there's millions and millions of people that are going to enjoy next summer, regardless of what happens this summer. Where should we go to now?
So to hop back to the Gold Cup, we have a Group C doubleheader tomorrow. First up, Jamaica against Guadeloupe. We'll see how many minutes Mikel Antonio plays. That's been such a great story, his comeback from that horrible car accident. And then the second game, Guatemala versus Panama, two teams that won their opening matches. I know you thought that 5-2 scoreline flattered Panama a little bit. They weren't that impressive to you against Guadeloupe. A lot of people talking of Panama now as one of the big boys in CONCACAF, a team that could potentially win this Gold Cup. Are you buying that?
I think, do I think they could potentially win? No, I don't. They're good, but I just think Canada still to me are the cream of the crop.
Is Panama better than this version of the U.S. team if you're ranking teams?
I would probably in this moment say yes because they're more of a team. If you gave this same U.S. team 3 or 4 more games together, I would say this U.S. team. But I just think this moment right now, if they played tomorrow, they are a little bit more of a team. And I would think more times than not, they probably win. But we also have probably 2 or 3 more games till we might play Panama, right?
Sure.
So I think by that time, we will be a better team.
You think Panama finishes this out and finishes top of
You
the
think
group
they can win it?
Yes, I think they definitely top this group, and I Kadaski is a big miss for them. I think if they had him, I'd give him a shot at winning this tournament. Without him, I'm not sure. Now, you said Canada is the cream of the crop for you. So Canada versus Mexico, if those two teams played tomorrow,
Look,
you would
Mexico can win that game, of course.
Right.
But I just think Mexico or Canada are the most explosive, most dynamic.
Depth.
Tons of depth. I mean, the guys they brought in off the bench the other night, you're just like, geez, Schaffelberg and Promise David and Kyle Laren. And I mean, they are very deep and they just have the next guy can
Kinda
come off.
jealous.
The next guy. I am super. I mean, you look at our forward crop right now, and then you look at theirs, and you're like, dang, that would be. And our guys are acquitting themselves well, but those guys are real players.
Now we're waiting to see what the new punishment is going to be for Jesse Marsh. He was already suspended for the first 2 games of this Gold Cup, and then apparently did something in the match against Honduras that might get him in further hot water. But what do you make of Jesse as a character in general? We talk about him so much on the podcast, all these veiled shots at the U.S. He's clearly salty about how that process played out and him not getting that job.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he's very happy right now because, to your point, he's got a great team. So what do you make of Jesse Marsh right now?
What I've learned, and you know this with CONCACAF, is be careful, right? Because they will absolutely make an example out of him. I would not be surprised. I don't know any of the details. I don't know what happened if they just suspend him for the rest of the tournament. Would not surprise me because he's already on probation, right? And it's like violating your probation now, right? So do not be surprised if they make an example out. And right now, he's got to be careful because he thinks the rules don't apply to him. Clearly, he got punished, and then he just said, "I don't care. I'm going to go do it again." And CONCACAF, man, there are a lot of things, but they're not kind in those moments. They will hammer him if they have to.
Now, you have something on Jesse Marsh?
No.
You've talked
Listen,
about him.
Jesse is the gift that keeps on giving.
I know he's great for us.
So there will be plenty more to talk about.
Do
It'll be
more,
interesting
Jesse.
to
Do it
see,
more.
Like Landon said, what the ultimate punishment is, or if there isn't a punishment.
So the last few nights, we've treated the Club World Cup as this little drive-by thing to mention in passing at the end. I do want to dig into it a little bit more today because we had a historic result. Inter Miami rallied to beat Porto 2-1.
Why is it historic? First time they've beaten
It's
MLS team
the
has
first
beaten?
victory by an MLS team against a European side in a competitive match, and
There you
the
go.
first loss by a European team to a non-European team in a competitive match since 2012 when Corinthians beat Chelsea in the Club World Cup final that year.
Wait, didn't someone else just beat?
Well,
tonight?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, sorry.
So because the Inter Miami,
you're
the Inter Miami loss came first. So they trailed 1-0 at halftime, and then Segovia equalized early in the second half, and then Messi with an incredible free kick, the 68th free kick goal of his career.
That's insane, by the way. 68 free kick goals.
That's more than like a lot of players have goals,
95%
period,
of the
over the
world,
course
yeah,
of their
ever.
careers. But yeah, so, we've talked about how people are treating this tournament. It's a referendum on this league versus that league, this region versus that region. And so what do you think this means for MLS, for Inter Miami to go out and beat a European
Doesn't
side?
this feel like the first time that you can accurately make the statement how a league compares to other leagues? Because in the past, in the previous iteration of the Club World Cup, there are only 8 teams there. When you play friendlies, it's not the same, right? So now you're like, all of these teams are playing their real players. All of them are fit, not in, it's the quote off season for the European teams, but they came straight into it. All the South American teams, everybody around the world, the Middle Eastern teams, South African, they're all the African teams, they're all in the middle of their season. So you can start to say, okay, I mean, does it mean we're better than European teams because Inter Miami won 1 game? No, but I think it was a really important step for MLS.
And then Seattle gave a pretty good account of themselves again. They did lose 3-1 to Atletico Madrid. Rusnak scored their goal, but Seattle had some chances throughout and played pretty well. And then the last game of the day, Botafogo of Brazil beat PSG 1-0 at the Rose Bowl. Igor Jesus with the goal. That was the Libertadores champions against the Champions League winners. What's interesting about that, Landon, is that in Brazil, they've been very excited about how this tournament has started and how well Brazilian teams are doing. But even the most nationalistic Brazilians, the way they framed it is this: look, European football is top heavy. We know there's 8 to 10 super clubs that are on a different level from everybody else, but they think this tournament is exposing that the second tier in Europe isn't all that great. And if you put the best South American teams up against second tier European sides, your Dortmunds, your Portos, they can play with them and possibly beat them. But this even threw Brazilian commentators for a loop, that Botafogo could go out and beat PSG. So now, I mean, I'm reading every other comment on Twitter, on my timeline, is Brazilians saying that this is destroying the myth of European supremacy and all that. That might be a bit much.
It's one result, right? But they're absolutely, they can compete, right? And if they played 10 times, PSG probably wins 6 or 7. They draw a couple, and Botafogo wins once or twice. But that was the once or twice. I mean, that's the beauty of soccer, right?
You might not have listened to the show earlier in the week, but it's interesting and rich coming from my friend over here, because he made a point of coming on and saying that in no way, shape, or form should Club World Cup or anything else be used at this point as a referendum on a team or a
It's
league.
the only time ever it
My
should be.
point is an individual game.
No,
shouldn't
I
be
get
used. You
that.
need a sample size. You need patterns.
But you're going to
and-
get a sample size.
Yeah, we'll see. By the end of this tournament, I think we can take a step back and draw some conclusions from it. But
Yeah.
there were a day or two into it, there were people already drawing these
Well,
sweeping
that's just-
conclusions.
I mean, why can't you? We just talked about Max Bretos saying, hey, why can't you just live and let live and have people
Well,
have a
just
good
look
time
on
and
the bright
celebrate?
side.
Why
Look
can't
on
you
What's
the
just-
bright
interesting,
side.
last point about this. Again, there are people in Brazil that have, for the last 20, 30 years, have bristled over the fact that the national team is comprised almost entirely of European-based players. It's the type of conversations
Sure.
that people are starting to have in this country.
Mm.
And they're now pointing to these results as evidence that Brazil should call up more domestic-based players. And it's ironic that this is happening at a time where Brazil just hired Carlo Ancelotti as their coach. I think if you had a Brazilian coach, he would be more receptive to that argument, but a European, less so.
Touche.
Look, and peek behind the curtain, we have the FIFA Club World Cup going on in our green room and all over the place. So we are ingesting and digesting as much soccer as we possibly can. We included, we said at the beginning of the tournament, even though we're not televising it, if something big were to happen, like
we'll show
Messi
it.
scoring, we showed it, and we will celebrate it because it's happening on our shores. It's big in the world of soccer, and it's newsworthy. And so, whether it's the State of the Union or on Fox, we are going to do it. And it's fun, and I think people are getting into it. And I think as we get further and further along, and some of the teams get weeded out. I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. I think the crowds will get bigger. I think the interest will get bigger, as is the case in oftentimes when it comes to tournament. Before we head out of here, Landon, I mentioned at the top of the show that you have a book coming out next year, a memoir. Can you give us a little peek behind the curtain as to how long you worked on it and what the experience was like working on it, kind of going back and going through and then trying to articulate and obviously write down or had to have people help you write down. I don't know how you did it.
Someone wrote it. This was actually the original plan, believe it or not, was to put it out ahead of 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So for lots of reasons, just didn't feel right. And it takes so long. And how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I wanted to do it right. But I don't have any desire to put out a book that is exclusively my soccer life, right? A lot of people who follow soccer and have followed some part of my career know most of that. I have like we all do, right? I believe an interesting story that led me to where I am today. And I want to walk people through that. I have, part of it is my relationship with my father growing up, who wasn't around a lot, growing up with a single mom in a very poor American household, my struggles with depression and my mental health challenges. And then all of my soccer career, the stuff that happened, the World Cup, my time with Beckham, time with you at the Galaxy, and going in deeper. I don't need to tell people that we won this game 3-2. People watched that and saw that. So it's a little look inside. I think it's interesting. I think it'll help some people, and I'm excited for it to come out.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm interested in it. Again, you are a legendary soccer player, and certainly that is a hook, and I'm sure there is soccer in it, but you are so much more, as are all players. And getting a peek behind the scenes and seeing who they are as people, I think is important. And so I'm glad that you're telling the story. I know it took a long while. I know it's a lot of work, but I'm glad that it's coming out now.
Yeah.
Lex, it was an honor tonight to have the greatest player in CONCACAF history here. Get out of here with your Keylor Navas nonsense.
You agree, right? I mean,
goalkeeper.
I don't have to be number one, but you can't have Keylor Navas as the best player in CONCACAF history.
But all right, we may disagree on all this, but can we at least agree that the best dressed man, at least at this Gold Cup, and maybe in international soccer,
Hervé Renard.
I am, for those that are watching the show, I am giving you my best Hervé Renard with my white shirt.
Yeah, it's not good, though.
Mo, who was a guest with us last night, Mo Do, at one point tonight, he turned to me and he said, "The dude's not sweating. The dude's not."
He was not sweating.
If anybody watched the games today, the games were in Houston and were Austin. It was blazing hot, and everybody was sweating out there. And this guy's wearing a white shirt, no undershirt, And it was only until like the end of the game where we started to see some little splotches, little beads, and then he had one of the buttons undone. So
he's so tan, by the way.
he's
just.
I bet you he smells wonderful.
Total.
Gosh. Well, I mean, he's awesome. And he's done a great job in all the different places that he's been. I remember years ago on the pod when I was giving my lists of potentials, one of them was Luis Enrique. And I know at one point it was Hervé Renard before he actually went and coached France in the Women's World Cup and all that. So I got a lot of time for him. The way he looks and the way he coaches, he's fun to watch. Anything before we go, Mosse?
I do want to wish our producer, Sean Sullivan, a happy birthday. And I want to welcome our other producer, Kyla Morris, to the party. Today was her 2025 Summer of Soccer debut. Kyla finally in the producer chair.
Way done. She did. And we should thank Landon Donovan. Thank you so much. You can see him as we go on with the Gold Cup. He will be with us at studio. He'll be calling games. Are you enjoying the TV gig?
Love.
Yeah.
You know, like you probably doing the podcast has really helped me because I don't do it all the time. You do this all the time. So I'll take 3 months, 6 months, sometimes a year in between doing this. And it takes time to get reps and speaking and all that. But doing the podcast every week now, you just get used to being in front of the camera, speaking, the timing, all that. It's helped a lot.
You've gotten so much better, man. I remember when you first started, you
always
always had
crap.
No, you always had good points, but you were kind of mild-mannered and shy. Now you're just much more confident on the air and very interesting and funny too. I mean, we love having you around.
Well,
Thanks,
I mean,
Mosse.
I wish we could say the same thing about Mosse, but it's okay. Again, you can find Landon, like we said, on all of our Fox coverage of the Gold Cup and Unfiltered Soccer with Tim Howard. And like we said, his book will be out next year. You're going to come back on the pod here later on in the tournament?
Sounds good. Hopefully we're around for a long time.
We're going to be just fine. We're going to be just fine. Anything?
That's it.
All right. Keep downloading and reviewing and subscribing and rating and doing all the different things that you do, especially over there on that YouTube channel. Keep pounding away at the old subscription button. Bang it up and down, left, right, up and down, left, right, all of it out there. We appreciate everybody out there listening to the State of the Union. Again, every single day after the Gold Cup games, you can find us here, and then it'll show up in your feed too. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. U.S. with the win. Very, very nice. It was very, very professional. Moving on. And, you know.
Moving on.
Yeah. And my best to Chris Richards. Man of the match. Wonderful, wonderful day. But you're only as good as your last game, so let's see what happens going forward. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.